Dear colleagues, good afternoon. It is indeed a great privilege and joy to be here with you today. Thanks to Lorenzo for the introduction and to the organization for inviting me to present at this delightful event. I was asked to look at the topic of ballast water management from a shipping company standpoint, and I immediately realized that we have something in common with the environment. We don't like ballast water. We don't like ballast water because it means that our vessels are empty. And if our vessels are empty, they can't bring the profit and income they were bought for. I also realized that whatever could negatively impact on those profit and income, even if it's a ballast water management convention, is a risk, and that's to be managed. Therefore, the title of my presentation today. Ballast Water Management Convention has the aim to minimize the transfer of harmful aquatic organisms in order to protect the marine environment and human health. Specifically, as the convention states, to prevent, minimize, and ultimately eliminate the risks to the environment, human health, property, and resources arising from the transfer of harmful aquatic organisms and pathogens. Therefore, we can say that Ballast Water Management Convention is essential for the preservation of the marine ecosystem. Now, having said that, presenting such a wonderful global beneficial initiative from a cold managerial perspective could sound inappropriate at best and troublesome at worst. But here we are. If we say that is a risk, we have to manage it properly. Now the real question is, what is a risk? Risk is a huge topic and there are innumerable definitions of risk. I'm not digging into that, but I think we are safe saying that risk is the possibility that an event will adversely impact achievement of mission or business objectives. In our case, the profitability of the vessel. As a shipping company, we identify three main risks. The first one is what we call the preventable risks. Essentially, they are internal risks that we try to eliminate or avoid. Then we have what we call strategical risks. Essentially, they are risks that we take voluntarily because we believe that they could generate a superior return. And then we have risks which I believe an international convention could be in the scope of, what we call external risks. They are beyond any control of the company and they cannot be reduced and they cannot be avoided. They can only be identified, assessed, and mitigated. Now, in order to give you a feeling, a sense of the risk when an international convention such as the Ballast Water Management one is coming into force, I've collected a few announcements here and there on the convention itself. Entry into force of the Ballast Water Management Convention is approaching. Companies have to be ready. There is a risk of not integrating ballast water management measures soon enough. Companies tend to lose business and opportunities. Companies must act. Staying still is a risk. In other words, if you don't do anything, you run a risk. Now, what is really peculiar for an international convention coming to force is that the risk is already in the wording of the convention itself. If I recall correctly, Article 18 is the article dealing with the entry into force of the convention. And Article 18 says that the convention will enter into force 12 months after the date on which no less than 30 states have either signed it without reservation as to ratification, acceptance, or approval, or have deposited the requisite instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession. Now, it's not by mistake that after the date is in capital letter. The problem is that we know that there is a risk out there because there is a trigger event out there, but we don't know when this trigger event is going to be met because we don't know when the 30 state is going to ratify, and then the clock starts ticking. So the only thing we can do is approaching the matter or start approaching the matter from a risk management perspective. Again, risk management is a huge topic, but I think for our concern today, we can say that risk management is the process of identifying, analyzing, and responding to risk factors through a project life and in the best interest of objective. Again, in our case, the profitability of the vessel. We, as the majority of shipping companies, have a risk management system to identify and quantify risks and predict the impact. in order to do one thing: evaluate whether a risk is acceptable or not. Now, narrowing this topic into the Ballast Water Management Convention. When such convention was about to enter into force, lots of questions were arising in the mind of a ship owner. Is installation economical? Can the vessel be sold? Can I renew the IOPP, essentially the certificate that you have to renew? So can the IOPP be decoupled and renewed before deadline? Should we scrap the vessel? If we install the system, shall we pay upfront or ask for finance? Can costs be recovered somehow? Of course, these are all questions that we have to analyze each ship according to age, according to type, and according to the company situation. What we can do is carrying out a very basic, but I would say essential cost-benefit analysis. In our case, we have capital expenditure, looking at cost, which essentially are the initial cost of the system, and cost for any additional components required for operation. Then we have operational expenditure, what we call OPEX, which are the annual cost of running the system, and usually increase over time as the system efficiency decreases. And then, as anything else, we have to leave a margin, a buffer of 10%, for any additional capital invested in system through the service life, including maintenance and repair, as well as component replacement and upgrades. Usually, a lower initial capex can lead to higher long-term cost. And then we move on the benefit side of the analysis. Now, this is quite specific because in the case of the Ballast Water Management Convention, there is not an immediate commercial benefit. It's more preventing an income loss. As a matter of fact, the ballast water treatment could impact vessel revenue due to fines if the system is not performing optimally in all conditions, and if it's not compliant with the water ballast exchange. And then we also have a restriction in the port access. Then we look at a series of commercial issues which we cannot do on our own, but we have appointed a network of consultancies firm, P&I, lawyers, agency, flag state representative. The first thing that we look is who is responsible for it, who is going to do the job. Do we have a ship management agreement for that specific vessel? If yes, probably there is a manager's obligation. And the manager obligation has to follow up the preparation of the ballast water management plan and procuring approval by ship flag state, providing training for crew in relation to ballast water procedure, arranging for ships to be surveyed, and obtaining the ballast water management certificate. Then we move into what I would call more contractual issues. Apart from the one Lawrence is going to make, which I believe is very relevant on bareboats, there are several contractual issues. There is delays in the voyage being performed, issue with cargo to be loaded, time charter, time spent in ballast water exchange, whether we should draft a ballast water sampling, and of course sitting down with our technical guys and reviewing our sale and purchase portfolio and strategy, because we want to make sure that nothing is missing there. There is nothing worse at this moment of time with this crisis to having a purchase wrong in our order book. Ship owners have the duty to choose the correct system, but what happens if not? There are sanctions for ship owners. The test has to be repeated, and there is an issue of cost and delay. If the sample is found non-compliant, we have to identify reason and party against whom we will have a possible recourse, which could be the manufacturer on the lab for wrong test or wrong interpretation. And finally, we look at problems such as procedure of enforcement, port inspection and checks. We look at the track record of that ship in that specific port area. We look at the nature of sanction, whether they are fines or criminal charges. We look at whether we have a uniformity of sanction worldwide. And last but not least, we said something about risk today, but can I transfer my risk to someone else? In other words, if something wrong happens, is there anyone paying on my behalf, the insurance side? This is usually a question that ship owners like an answer. A yes for an answer, but it's not always the case. In our specific instance of today, I believe we have to see what's happening when the system is up and running. There is always a tailor-made cover. We have to see if there is an efficiency and a conveniency in ensuring that. So concluding, an international convention such as the ballast water management is coming into force. What do we do? Installing the system, selling the vessel, scrapping the vessel, renewing the IOPP. These are all questions that we can make ship by ship. What we can do is carrying out an analysis of cost and benefit. CAPEX, OPEX and buffer for cost, and the benefit is the capacity to avoid an income loss and decrease the risk of fines due to non-compliance. Then we look to several of commercial issues and we monitor potential extension. As a matter of fact, IMO has already given a couple of years extension on the installation. And then finally, never get lazy, because you don't finish analyzing something that the next one is already on the plate. Remaining on environmental challenges, the Global Sulfur Cap 2020 is already there and has to be analyzed. Thank you very much.